So welcome all, and thank you for joining the 6 European Universities of the Seas CU Blue Talk session. First, a few housekeeping rules. This event is organized as a webinar. It's different than typical Zoom meetings, so you won't be able to directly interact with other participants besides chat. There is also a question and answers feature, which you are invited to use during the talk to ask the questions. And you can also upvote the questions from others. And now the small introduction to the CU. CU is a European University Alliance. It's connected by the seas. CU is the glue that binds education, research, business, society, and environment in order to answer the future challenges of the seas. And Blue Talks is a series of short expert talks targeted at broader academic population and representatives of the industry and other stakeholders interested or active in the blue economy sectors. With Blue Talks, we are looking to entice interest in the blue economy and to help you all in understanding the scope of the blue economy. With the first 5 events, we touched various topics from sustainable and innovative uses of marine resources to research and governance, to tourist behavior in pandemic times, operational oceanography, aquaculture. And today we will basically touch completely new field. We will touch upon education, and all of the events are available on our YouTube channel. We usually publish recordings like when we prepare everything, we publish it like 2 or 3 weeks after the event. And I will now like to invite our Vice Rector and CU Executive Committee member, Professor Leandra Vranješ-Markić, to tell us a few words about the vision of CU.
Okay, thank you. So everyone, it's a pleasure to welcome you all on behalf of the University of Split and our CU Alliance. Again, very happy that at least from the registration, our audience is extending with the participants from many other countries, also outside Europe. For example, we had Philippines. And so marine and maritime environment and sustainable development goals are at the core of our mission. Mission that connects our 6 universities: University of Zacatecas, University of Western Brittany, University of Kiel, University of Gdańsk, University of Split, and University of Malta, but also our 32 associate partners comprising companies, research institutes, NGOs, public authorities. And together we aim to create a pan-European university of the future, where our students and researchers and all the staff are able to move freely across the borders, but also across the disciplines and different sectors, where they can jointly with other stakeholders co-create solutions to important challenges. And in order to reach all these goals, of course, we need to strengthen much more the links between our education and research, and also between knowledge transfer and innovation, but also always with the responsibility to our society and environment. And as Nicola said, part of our actions are also this Blue Talk series. And it's one way in which we try to engage also our researchers and our students and all the other stakeholders in the discussion of research innovation opportunities, discussion of different best practices and ways how we can achieve ways to transfer the knowledge and innovation and how to address challenges which we are all facing, but also how to be better stewards of our planet. And in this respect, our talk and today's speaker, Avan Antia, will address these topics and give us the best practice in MOOC preparation. And we are very happy to have Avan here. She's also a director of the graduate school, and we have an opportunity to collaborate together in one of the CU projects where we are trying to address the skills of our PhD doctorate holders. And I'm looking forward to today's talk, which will, I'm sure, also show us a little bit of how we can all contribute together to the stewardship of our planet, and how we need to look at the challenges from the variety of different disciplines. So I hope this, and I'm sure this webinar will also be a source of inspiration to us all. So please all join with your questions and comments, and be in touch for further Blue Talks. Thank you.
Thank you, Leandra, for a perfect introduction. I don't have anything to add. So indeed, we are one planet. Yesterday, I was on an event with people from Vanuatu. I had to look on the map, where is it? This morning, I was on an event with people from New Caledonia. And basically, the world is small. We have participants all over on our events. And yes, we need to take care of the world and ocean as we should. So Avan, please, thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, Nicola and Leandra, for the nice introduction. I'll just start by sharing my screen, which I'm sorry to say is on the wrong. Hold on. This was not supposed to happen, but it sometimes does. Okay. So I'll talk to you today about a project that we've been running for about 5 years. And this is a massive open online course called One Planet, One Ocean, From Science to Solutions. I know that the MOOC, at least the word MOOC, is part of the CEU consortium ideas. So maybe one can have a few ideas to share if this should go forward within that framework. I'm here on behalf of all these co-authors who've all contributed to making the MOOC such a success. So I speak on behalf of a lot of people today. I'm going to just tell you a little bit about what MOOCs are in case you don't know about it. And it's a rapidly changing and developing field, which I find very exciting. The massive, in January of 2020, we found that worldwide 110 million people had registered for MOOCs, and that is a substantial contribution to global education. The open, because there are usually no restrictions, it's open source, anybody from anywhere with an internet connection can join. Everything is online and usually remains online, so people are flexible in how they can use this material. It is sometimes about degrees, but mostly it's about learning. So there are different kinds of MOOCs and have different reasons. It's also free with some exceptions if their costs are very small, which makes it accessible to people who do not have that expertise and those opportunities perhaps locally. And I think I'll show you today that what's exciting about this is that it's a very interactive way of discussing between learners and speakers and experts. And just a word about MOOCs, we find that some of the major MOOCs, the number one, which is I think from Stanford, is about machine learning. So clearly it's about a skill. But as soon as you go further, you find a lot of MOOCs on issues like, I think number two with 3.1 million is about well-being. How do you achieve well-being in your life and happiness? So there's a wide range of things you can learn in that way. Our MOOC is the Ocean MOOC. And in 2015, when the UN passed the resolution on the Sustainable Development Goals, the Sustainable Development Solution Network decided to open a platform for global education to further these goals. And Martin Fisbeck, a professor in Kiel, was assigned Life Below Water, SDG 14, which is what we are concerned with. And so we took on with scientists in Kiel and the International Ocean Institute, we took on the challenge of developing a MOOC on the ocean. The International Ocean Institute also runs many excellent regional training courses for ocean professionals and is also associated with the CEU project. Our goals from the start were, of course, to present integrated scientific knowledge on the entire ocean system, but also to talk about human interactions and what does the ocean offer us in terms of services, but also what are the risks that come from the ocean. We wanted, as experts, as scientists, to present the scientific rationale for good stewardship, good management, and solutions for ocean problems in sustainability. And of course, not least, we wanted to give people around the world direct access to scientists that they might not be able to have in a more personal interaction context. Of course, from the start, we thought, well, who are we addressing? To make a MOOC, you need to identify. So clearly there's students from all disciplines who would want to gain or increase or further their knowledge on the ocean. But a lot of people working on ocean issues. We were not sure at the beginning who these might be, but certainly we had them in mind. I think there's a large interest in ocean topics from members of the public, and certainly multipliers such as teachers at the university or other levels. But we started with the aim and with the vision, not just to give them knowledge, which of course scientists have. We wanted to inform people, but we wanted more perhaps to engage them and inspire them to take this knowledge further into what they were doing. So these were some of our goals. And the research team in Kiel has developed since about 15 years now to include not just the natural sciences, but also experts from law, economics, philosophy, and the social scientists to look at the ocean in its entirety, not just as a physical state, but also as something with which we interact as humans. And I think this was a powerful pool, including members from the International Ocean Institute in Malta, from which to draw as lecturers. So this is the trailer that we were issued to the MOOC. So just enjoy.
Vast and endless. It encircles the planet, covers 71% of the Earth's surface, and provides more oxygen than all the rainforests combined. It holds unmatched and sometimes untouched natural resources, more than we could ever imagine. Here life began and has been sustained for millennia, harboring secrets we have yet to unlock. This is the ocean, the source of food and energy and the highway for international commerce. Its shores are home to 40% of humanity that lives within 100 kilometers of the coast. It provides sustenance, livelihoods, and links our global economy. But this is also the ocean, a vast yet finite system bearing the telltale signs of our careless lifestyles. It is highly stressed through our growing interventions and is groaning under the burden of pollution and climate change. How can we be good stewards of our planet so that we and future generations can live in harmony with the ocean? Can we use our understanding of the ocean system and human system to change our actions to support human life within safe limits so that the ocean can continue to sustain its eco-services for us, as it has for so long? Come join us and learn about the ocean and what it means to you. When we put our knowledge together, can we use ocean system thinking to arrive at more sustainable, smarter interactions and solutions leading to better governance?
Okay, so that was the trailer that we set up when we started in 2015. And I think you see already that part of it is really about getting people excited on the topic, and that we have a wonderful subject to talk about because people are already excited. So when we got down to the production, we certainly thought there are several challenges because we as scientists within a university context are now going to provide a different kind of product. So we thought which nuggets of knowledge from the vast knowledge that we might have are relevant for this MOOC. How can we present them not as a classroom format, which we do with our students, but at an interesting, engaging format? How can we actually engage learners so that it's not just passive, one-sided information transfer? And how can we unite all this knowledge to focus on the function of the ecosystem and issues of sustainability? So these were some of the challenges we faced. And in the first run, as I said, we developed in 2015. The first run was broadcast in 2016. We put this into 10 modules and another 3 weeks for people to continue learning. And as you see here, the modules were, if you want, rather disciplinary. We talked about physics, we talked about the biology, we talked about law, economics, coastal issues, and then a whole bunch of solutions. And this was a huge bunch of knowledge that we had. There were about 65 videos and a lot of other material. And I think it was well received, but we realized that it might be possible to change it to make it more digestible if you want. So in coming years, we launched in terms of 6 modules and included all of the disciplinaries knowledge into a holistic view. So we had the legal and governmental issues put in together with the natural sciences. We also had people such as MOOC scouts here going out and interviewing other people to make more engaging, interesting, and current topics. We had live Q&As with international guests and a whole bunch of assignments, which I'll speak about a bit later on. So what kind of topics did we cover? I really can't tell you all of it because it's just so much, but things that to today, comments that we get from the learners, just engage them on issues that they were already thinking about. Why is eating tuna unsustainable? We'll see a little bit of this later on. What are the potentials and risks of climate intervention or climate engineering, if you wish? Deltas, systems, human systems faced with multiple threats from and with the ocean. The biological pump, how does the ocean biology react with climate? Alien species migrations, sea level issues, not just global, but regional, where you live. The risks from the ocean, landslides causing tsunamis and damage to property. We talked a little about the economy of how do you value ocean assets? What about the economics of fisheries, marine spatial planning, governing of marine biodiversity, multiple stressors of change, and so on. So you see, we really had a holistic view and people could dip in and find out what they were interested in, but also go into things that they might not have thought about that they could learn about. And this is basically, I'll just go through this rather quickly. This is basically the participant experience. So each week there was an introduction, this is what you will learn this week, and a number of lectures that people could look through at their own pace. There was a discussion forum, which we'll talk about later, which just took off completely, where people interacted not just with us, but with each other. There's reading material, assignments to test yourself, to do things, a quiz which you required to get a certificate, and every now and then a live Q&A with people from around the world talking about different issues where learners could come in and ask questions. Let me now go back and forth and dip into the MOOC a little bit to give you an idea of what the learner experience would be and maybe interest you in actually knowing more about it. So the first week was really to give the integrated view. What is sustainability? How finite is our ocean? What does that mean? Economically, what kind of models of sustainability might be valid? How would you govern global commons? And we talked a little bit about solution options and how humans interact, see the system. And I'm going to play you here just a small clip from Martin Fisbeck, which I think you will also enjoy.
Welcome to a reflection about the special role that our ocean plays for the Earth system and humanity. Now, as ocean discovery advanced, there seemed to be a bit of a finiteness to the ocean, but the way we behaved and interacted with the ocean is we thought we could take out of the ocean whatever we wanted and put back into the ocean what we don't need without any limits. To me, the biggest challenge of our times is to think about how can we take the turn, transform our lifestyles to become more sustainable.
So you see already, without prior knowledge, people are drawn into issues that concern them personally and concern all of us. So it's a global issue. I'm going to now take you on a short excursion into the course, which I have to do by changing my screen. So here we are in the course, and you can see we're in module 1. And this is basically what a user would do at home, on their own pace, dipping in and out, looking at things that they might find interesting. The lectures were about 5 to 8 minutes with transcripts that people could read, or either while the video is going or on its own. So let's listen to the first few sentences of Nele Matsluk, who's a lawyer at Kiel University.
Imagine your neighbor fished all the fish in your pond, or he discards his garbage on your lawn. You wouldn't like it, right? You would call the police, and maybe you would take your neighbor to court to have him fined. How about an industrial trawler going out to sea, fishing all the fish until the fish stock is entirely depleted? How about a vessel going out to the ocean and dumping hazardous waste into the ocean? What do? We don't like it either. But do we go and call the police? Can we take that person or another state to court? Is there a court to sanction this behavior? Answers will largely depend upon where the incident happened.
Okay, so what has Nele done? She hasn't started with legal talk. She hasn't started with the regulations and the governance issues of the ocean, which of course she does bring into the lecture, but she started by bringing people into the question and framing it in a way that engages and people can understand. So what happened now? After listening to a lecture, after each lecture, we had a little question. We said, please use the discussion forum below to engage in discussion with all the course participants. So put your questions in now, or put your sentence in while they're fresh in your mind. And this landed up with a huge number of statements. So there are about 60 comments on this. And so let's see, for example, what Cassandra posted just about 9 hours ago. So she says, reading the other posts, I can see I'm not the only one who's saddened and disheartened. The tragedy of the commons is a real effect. I doubt there are easy solutions, but we must search for a way forward. And as you can see, there are people who've really thought about this and are giving their comments in. And reading the comments of others is really where people, in the first instant, have interacted tremendously with the MOOC. So this is one part of the user experience. And then they would go on, I'll show you some of this, to questions. They'd show accessory material and maybe have a quiz or an assignment. So that's a small excursion into the live MOOC. As you see, we had posts just quite recent. Let's go back now to the PowerPoint. So we thought about how to make this interesting also in a visual sense, because understanding how learning works is, of course, learning is an emotional, cognitive process. And sitting in front of a screen, listening to frontal lectures has to be sort of made more engaging than when you can be in a room with people. So we used a couple of instruments, visualizations, for example. There were tens or maybe about 60 or 70 visualizations. I particularly like this as an example, because it really gives you an idea that the size difference in phytoplankton from the smallest to the largest phytoplankton is something. How can we imagine this? Problem with the ocean is our imagination as land living creatures. It's the same as between a fish and the size of the city of Manhattan. So we're talking about a system that works on, totally different rules to on land, where you would not see this within the first unicellular plants. We used animations. So I'm going to play you this animation, which is a little long, but I think it's a wonderful example of how Thorsten Reusch, our lecturer, who's an evolutionary ecologist, brought in the simple idea of food chains to answer the question of why is eating tuna bad? So I've I've kept the sound out of this, but I'll just tell you how he builds up his argument. Starting, of course, from the base of the food chain, so phytoplankton, we come to the first trophic level. Zooplankton is the second trophic level. So you build it up and compare to what might be on land. And what you see here is land people are already eating at the second trophic level. We don't even eat at the third trophic level, but we're not going to be eating marine organisms at that level. We're starting the smallest fish, which really don't land on our plate. But this goes on to the fourth, smaller fish, and maybe to the fifth trophic level, which is really where tuna come in. So just looking at it like this makes clear to people a simple concept: how high up the food chain are we feeding when we eat large fish? Going into this, you see how the energy loss, about a 10% per trophic unit, translates into a 200 gram of tuna steak, requiring about a ton of phytoplankton. And this, of course, is totally unsustainable if you relate it to something you know, which is land plants. And in fact, at the fifth trophic level, you can come up with some imaginary creature because it doesn't exist, let alone providing protein for humankind. But nature has offered a solution, or shows us the solution to this, in terms of, oops, sorry, my fault. I have to forward this a little bit. Nature has showed us a solution. And this is the tuna steak, I apologize. This is, has showed us a solution in terms of organisms that already, you see here this great basking shark that already feeds at the third trophic level and circumvents what we would say the higher part of the food chain. And this is indeed, as Thorsten says in his message, this is what humans could be doing, feeding lower in the trophic level, smaller swarming fish, for example. And this, many comments came on this. Among others, this has always made a good dinner time conversation. There are other animations which I'll go through rather fast, showing, for example, how the feedbacks in a warming ocean link to mixing and nutrient fluxes, which again translate into nutrient supply and the increase or the decrease potentially in surface productivity. The question being here, how would this reduce or increase productivity? And would this have an effect on fisheries production? So here we're going through rather long chain of argument to lead to something that people can relate to. We had really a lot of discussions. In fact, in the first round, it was difficult to actually respond to them all. And interestingly enough, the most common discussions were not questions on, I didn't understand that, can you tell me more about the other? But questions on, okay, now I've got this knowledge, how can I help? What can I do with this knowledge? A lot of people said, but I see corporations plundering the ocean and nothing's happened. What can I do? Is there a helplessness, or how can we empower ourselves? What about policy? And many, many people said, well, locally, I find this happens, or I find these kind of solutions. And we asked people to bring these thoughts in. But we also augmented this with reflective statements, because we wanted scientists to be people who, of course, find and generate that knowledge, but also for the learners to know that we're thinking about what this knowledge also means. And I'm going to play you one of these from Ulf Riebezel.
Message from this chapter: there is no quick fix for the climate change problem in the ocean. We are presently unable to make reliable predictions on the environmental risks and side effects associated with most of these measures. So fingers off, right? Well, imagine if progress on reducing CO2 emissions is remaining slow and the impacts of climate change become more severe, the pressure for alternative measures will build up. Mental risks. I therefore believe that we as scientists have a responsibility to further explore possible climate engineering approaches, whether we would like to see them implemented or not. What do you think?
So you see, and we had this in several of the lectures, where you saw scientists actually themselves reflecting on what knowledge means to all of us. And just a few examples, for example, talking about evolution of ocean life and evaluation or valuing the ocean. Certainly, it's more than monetary. There's something beyond monetary values to ocean life. Nele, who we heard earlier, makes clear that it's not just about governing of other bodies, it's about you and me. We talk about, from a resource economic point of view, what is the value of a natural asset? It's for future generations. It's not just what we can pull out and turn into money. And certainly the responsibility of scientists to put this in a framework that is responsible, ethical, and fair. And this, of course, had great resonance to people who were thinking along these lines, apparently, anyway. We also were really keen to have learner engagement. So we had assignments distributed throughout the MOOC, maybe about 10 or so assignments on a voluntary basis. But as you can see here, where we asked people, what are your interactions with the ocean? What does the ocean provide for you in terms of services? And about 3,000 people responded to this. And you see here the first few answers that they gave. So there's recreation, tourism, regulation of the climate, and so on, if you look through this. But what I'd like to point out to you, and this is the thing that we found throughout the MOOC, is look at that top few. About half of them are not in terms of physical or monetary value. It's in terms of emotional or life, how can you say, life, quality of life values, spiritual, cultural, inspirational. So people do look to the ocean in a very personal, sensitive manner. And this, I find, is one potential to perform research, if you want, on a large stakeholder population, which we discovered in the MOOC, but haven't yet used in any further sense. So we had several assignments. I showed you ocean services. We asked people to link the different SDGs to each other. How does an ocean goal link to evading poverty or global education? What about the condition at their coasts? And we had massive learner engagement. We also sent people to citizen science projects and said, okay, use these citizen science projects to go to your coast and find out about it, to identify plankton online if you're interested, to do little oceanography experiments in your kitchen. And these assignments were really well taken up by the learners. Then we had a further level of challenge for people who really wanted to get into it. And we said, go online to data portals. The World Bank, of course, has a large data assignment, and access data for your own country and ask yourself, in your own country, how would you decide how the coast should be protected? What about target 14.5 of the SDG 14? Should it be global? Should it be national, regional? What do you think? And people posted using hashtags within the course and could then discuss with each other and with us. So we did use different levels of engagement as well. Let me tell you a little bit now about the participants we had. So we had people, if you want, in regulation, governance, NGOs, so practitioners. We had a lot of multipliers and a lot of people in some academic field. So people who work for an NGO, for the government, a planning advisor for an environmental agency, a marine spatial planner, environmental coordinator, and so on. Multipliers were educators, sometimes in schools, in aquaria, communicators, so filmmakers, people like that, getting knowledge and inspiration from the MOOC on the ocean, and a whole bunch of people in academic studies related to the ocean, also not. I love this first one. I'm a PhD student of quantum physics. Our ocean needs help. So we had this exciting pool of learners. And let me just give you an idea of how this went. As I said, we've had 5 runs of the MOOC, and we've had a total of just under 24,000 people enrolling. Remember, it's free, anybody can enroll. This doesn't mean all of them went through the MOOC. And people who really were committed to getting a certificate are a very small number of these. The global average on MOOCs is about 7%. So here we had about 7%, and then it went down with time. But that's okay, because that's the option that people have. We had huge numbers of discussions. Now we've stopped counting. And interestingly, we had, of course, posts per week look small here because most people didn't actually post. But the average for the entire SDG Academy was almost a factor of 5 to 10 lower. It was interesting, and this is what we really find exciting. We had people truly from around the world, lots from the small island developing states, and from almost all countries. We've had to date lots of views. We can do the analytics over YouTube, but we see that people are really tuning in and watching what we have to say. How did this go with time? To just give you a little bit of an idea of how this MOOC business works. So the first run was 13 weeks and led by instructors live. And you see here, of course, the spike when it starts and the usual little spikes every week, but it goes down with time. So initially a huge burst, and then people look in and either stay or go away. Then, of course, it was offline. And then we had another 10 weeks instructor-led. Again, it was offline. And here you see that it was sort of going down a bit. But here there was no instructor leadership. It was just put online and people could use it. We then went in, the SDG Academy moved to having the course open for an entire year. People could come in at any time, do what they wanted at any time, totally at their own pace. And interesting, you see that there is not the big peak, but it sort of stays more higher with time. And as we went into the first Corona lockdown and people were really looking for online learning, as did most MOOCs, just really shot up quite a lot. And since then, we've been sort of another year of self-paced learning, and basically we're almost permanently online for learning. I just looked up yesterday, this week, we've had 770 views and 44 hours. So there's a continuous, if you compare it with presence-based learning, a very high level of learners continuously going through the course. I said, of course, that it's not just, these huge numbers. It sounds great. You've got so many 20,000 or whatever. But of course, as all of us do ourselves, I have enrolled for many MOOCs, looked into it and not really gone through the whole thing. But we've had maybe about 30 to 35% who've actually gone in and found something of interest and stayed with it. So these are completion rates of people who actually went into a module and completed the module, excuse me, in terms of did they watch videos, open the reading assignments, and do some form of assessment. And these completion rates are actually very high. So we're finding we don't target all of these huge numbers, but the ones who do, they stay with us and they learn with us. A little bit about participant information, which I found interesting. 121 countries, most of them, of course, don't have English as their native language. And perhaps fortuitously, being delivered by non-English speakers, the language was maybe a little slower, and we had the transcripts. And you see that they're Spanish, different German and French were the main secondary languages, but the transcripts helped a lot. And we find here, I'm sorry, this is not really readable. We find here that most people had something like a bachelor's and a master's degree. So some advanced university learning, quite a lot having even a doctorate. So we are finding out about the learners. We asked them, how much prior experience do you have? And we find that there is quite a lot, more than half had some academic or professional experience in ocean subjects. Some had none, and others learned informally as interested citizens. And what surprised us and what surprised the STG Academy, because it doesn't reflect the other courses that they have, is that a lot of people say, I'm in it for the enjoyment, for the curiosity. But several people said, almost half, it has some relevance to what I'm doing. And it will strengthen my profile, my professional profile. Among those who were students, we find that they were from an ocean or a non-ocean discipline. Gray are professionals from an ocean or a non-ocean discipline, and academics, but a quarter of them were just interested citizens, which I found quite heartening to see. We asked them, how will you use what you've learned? And it was interesting because people did say, I'm going to take this knowledge that I have and go into talks into the public at a science fair. I'm going to initiate discussions to raise awareness. I'm using the knowledge I've gained to take it to other people in my studies, as an advocate, if you want, in what I read to understand how do policies work, how might they be better. But I've also more confidence in discussing these things and could be more effective in my communication. We were delighted that about a third of people said that they actually used the course contents and what they learned in their studies or their work. So I won't bore you with a lot of participant comments, but this is exactly what we wanted. We wanted to translate complex topics into easy to understand concepts. And I think it worked pretty well. The video quality was high because we had a terrific documentary company who worked with us. Lots of links to other resources, and of course, not just knowledge on the ocean, but bringing it together to talk about ocean sustainability. So I'll skip the other comments and go straight to the lessons learned. I think that MOOC has been a powerful tool for global education. It's not curricular, so it's informal if you want, but it's really reached people that we would not have reached with conventional methods. And that is perhaps one of the main strengths of this format, not just ours, but this format altogether. Of course, it's heavy on information. We are the specialists on knowledge, if you want, but also powerful in inspiring people, in reflecting with them, engaging with them, and of course, allowing a huge global discussion to take place. Encouraging is that the learners of different backgrounds, including a lot of practitioners, used MOOC contents. And I think this brings us to the potential that this has. When we started, we were not so aware of this, but I think there's a huge potential for stakeholder engagement and bi-directional learning, meaning not just can we offer information, but through things like assignments, quizzes, even much more engagement, one could actually learn to see what practitioners are doing either regionally in terms of linking people with each other. And I think that is a huge, as yet from our side, not explored potential. So I'll end now. I think I've stayed within the time. Just with the comment that this is our last run, opened in September 2020. And as you see, as of today, we have over 250 active learners. About 150 are looking at videos. Some are doing assignments, and there's still quite a lot of discussion going on online. So I'd be delighted if you want to dip in, look at more, find out more information, bring your students into it, recommend them or recommend friends and colleagues to learn more about the ocean with people who, you know, an interdisciplinary teacher group. I think that's it. You can enroll at any point in time. The link is here. And I just end by thanking a whole bunch of people who really made this possible. And thank you as well for your attention. And I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks, Avan. You're really fantastic and realistic time planner.
You didn't believe that,
So,
did you?
yeah, 45 minutes exactly. So perfect. So Yeah, we should promote this further, especially as we saw that quantum physicists really liked it. So I think Leandra could promote it to her students at least. So we have 2 questions, but maybe we can jump in. Do you see it, Avan? So the questions are from Marta Skorek. What does actor or stakeholder engagement actually mean in the context of ocean governance? Receiving information, engaging in a dialogue, or co-creating knowledge? So that's one question.
Okay, let me take that question because I think it's a very relevant one. Stakeholder dialogue, I think in the last 10 years has become a huge buzzword. So we are all stakeholders. I am a stakeholder, all of us here are, in a different sense. And so if I understand the question correctly, what exactly does that mean? Is it, I think she asks very relevantly, is it unidirectional, giving knowledge, involving them in knowledge transfer, or is it actually co-creation? And I think ideally, it should be both, because stakeholders, of course, in a sense, are thirsty for knowledge that is the domain of what we do as scientists. But increasingly, and I think that's a good thing, scientists are thirsty for stakeholder knowledge, because we want to be relevant. We want to have application of what we are studying and what we're learning in the real world, and that stakeholders seem to know a lot about that in the real world. So I think this bidirectional exchange is very important. Just to say, as I showed you in the MOOC, we tapped into this large stakeholder field, but the MOOC has been going for 5 years, and at present we are not putting resources into it. Which is fine because it's still achieving its goals, but we're learning that it has the potential. For example, if you have groups of people on issues discussing among themselves, the solution to local issues on Pacific Island states, they know among themselves much more than we can say from, let's say, Central Europe. And so having them come in, give them knowledge and potential solutions, and have them give us their potential solutions, which will open new avenues for research. So I think that's what the question went into, and I think that certainly is something to be explored in the future in this kind of MOOC. We haven't done it, but it certainly has potential.
Now, you already answered the second question, perfect. So how do you compare the experience from having going from facilitated MOOC to an open one? So I suppose it was a lack of resources, but what was the reasoning, and how do you see the difference?
Yeah. So this is an extremely, as you can imagine, it's an extremely intensive thing to conduct. And it is, in a sense, a matter of resources. So during the first run of 13 weeks, there was a lot of information. People were going through as a cohort week to week, and practically every discussion was looked at, in this case, by me, if not replied to, then perhaps linked to something else or given more space for discussion. We asked more questions. And that is something that is not sustainable on a long-term basis. And I think that was what was very much appreciated during the first MOOC, but I think it's a good thing. The further MOOCs, as I showed you today, we went into the live MOOC, there's still so much discussion. So we have little tools such as saying at the end of each video, put in your thoughts now. And when people put in thoughts, they read what other people have thought, who think about regional issues or other issues or things that they might be working with. And then they discuss among themselves. And that has proved actually to be maybe not a full substitute, but an adequate substitute for having a learner-led course. So I think it works very well.
Yeah, there's a huge shift to learner-led courses, like community-driven courses and cohort-based learning. There's a number of startups currently trying to solve this issue. Yeah. So there was one more question from Marta. So As ocean governance issues are socially constructed, should ocean literacy also include critical thinking and critical language awareness?
Most definitely it should, without a doubt. I think, and this was brought in very nicely by Nele, but also in a chapter on ocean literacy, it's about all of us. And we bring to the table skills which we have or we learn in a professional or another platform to bring this over in an effective manner. So certainly, and I don't know how this happened, I would be very interested to know, but we didn't find out. So many people said they took parts of the MOOC and used it. All the material is open source. Anybody can download it. We want people to use it, download it, show it, you know, give talks or whatever. And I remember one participant logging in from the Solomon Islands who regularly brought school kids together. And they'd look at the videos and talk about them. And I mean, it's probably not the level of school children, but he introduced them and showed them some of the videos or brought it into a, you know, a child-friendly version. So I think we have to use all the skills that we have, and each of us has different ones.
To me, what is impressive is it's a more emotional subject. So, and it's a really great filter. So you have basically 4% of people are going to the end. Have you ever considered working with those people or trying to use them and engage them in some other activities?
Not actively is the answer to your question. Just to clarify, the 4% are people who got certificates. So to get a certificate, you not just had to go through, but you had to answer each of the questions and get at least 70% correct cumulatively. So that is, of course, a very small number. But we found, I can't give you exact numbers, but we found looking at the analytics from the video views and the assignments and quizzes, we found that maybe about 30 to 35% actually looked at the MOOC, who learned, who were not interested with a certificate. So that's still leaves 70% or so
number, yeah.
Who are not doing a lot, but that's still, you know, globally, that's maybe,
yeah.
I don't know, 5,000 people, which is still a good number of people who engaged with the MOOC. So the 3% is just the certificates.
Thanks. Leandra, do you maybe have a question?
Yes. Yes, it's very interesting. Avan, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about these citizen science projects. How do we engage people and what are the results?
Right. So we had a whole chapter on coasts and learned about how coasts develop, what are characteristics of a coastline, how human interactions with the coastline result in different impacts, what the possibilities, what the provisions, services of coasts are, from a biological state, from a physical state, from an economic state. And then we learned, of course, of the susceptibility of coasts, linking that to, as you could imagine, to sea rise, which will impact coastal cities and particularly deltas worldwide in a massive fashion. And then we have this, in fact, this was a project initiated parallel to this in Kiel, where they said, it's called Coastwards, it's still running. They wanted to research coastal structures and engage citizens worldwide. So you can go in, we directed them, in fact, we invited them to participate in the MOOC, and we directed the people to their website. And what you had to do is walk down to the coast. Take a picture, your horizon should be in the middle, you load it up, and then you come back to the MOOC, and we worked with the Citizen Science Project, and you learn more about this. So you characterize your coast, and then you're asked, in what sense do you think this coast is susceptible to erosion, to pollution, to accumulating plastics, to all sorts of things? What possibilities? How have you seen this coast change? What does that mean? And what are some solution options that can be presented, learning from coastal management in other countries? So that is the kind of citizen science. And we don't know, of course, how many people went in exactly through the MOOC, but they did have a surge in pictures coming in. I don't remember, it was several hundred. I don't remember exactly how much.
This is
So
excellent.
that was one example. I won't give you all of them, but that's an example.
Okay, great, thank you. And then maybe another question. I mean, from all those people who finished, can you detect what were the skills gaps? What were the skills they were and knowledge that they were mostly after from your MOOC? I suppose they use them maybe later in their jobs. Do you have some feedback on that?
That's a great question, Leander. I'm not going to divert to tell you what kind of things they learned, but what skill sets, I have to say, I don't know. I don't know. We didn't ask. And we did ask people at the end, would you like to engage further later on? But I don't think anything, some people said yes, but we didn't pick it up. I would hope that their skill sets included using knowledge for solution, how to merge the two, and looking beyond the facts to the reflection. I would hope, but I don't know.
Yes, well, no, it sounds so interesting. I'm wondering maybe I should also, sign up and.
I think you should.
Yeah.
Perfect. So thank you. If there are any questions, please ask now or we will end this. So we are coming close. And so we have just appreciation and thanks in the chat. So yeah, that's it. Thank you, Avan. Thank everyone. And see you on the 6th or 7th Blue Talk next time.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.